Hello and welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash here with episode 25. Huge weekend in combat sport. I'm a little bit late to it, but just got caught up on everything. You had UFC 313 with Alex Pereira losing to Magomed Ankalaev. You had the big all-women's card at Royal Albert Hall. Some other stuff went down. We've got Keith Thurman, Brock Jarvis tomorrow morning. On Wednesday. Thursday, you have Kenshiro Taraji, Seijo Yuri Akui. Out of Japan. That's Thursday morning. So we'll talk about those cards. We'll talk about all the stuff that happened this weekend. The Times Square press conference from Monday. We'll talk about Tank Roach a little bit more. And we'll talk about Bivol Benavidez and a whole lot more. So let's just hop right into it. So the big talking point, of course, is Alex Pereira losing by unanimous decision to Magomed Ankalaev in their light heavyweight championship fight in Vegas on Saturday at UFC 313. So let me just start off this by saying I am a huge fan of Pereira. I thought that Magomed certainly won the fight. I had Pereira winning round 1 and 5 and Ankalaev winning all the middle rounds. I know some people thought that Pereira won the third round. Personally, I just don't really see it. And it was an interesting fight because I think that neither guy was as good as we were expecting to be. I think that going into this fight, I was very nervous. For some reason, I just kind of felt like this was going to happen. And in my prediction, if you remember from the last episode, I didn't actually say, I think that Pereira will win. I said, I hope Pereira will win. And I was wrong. So, I just had a feeling that Ankalaev was going to be able to offset Pereira and, just clinch with him and grapple him. And that's exactly what he did. Now, one thing that is good about Pereira, what he did well in this fight was his takedown defense. He didn't get taken down once. And that was what we assumed was going to happen. He did a fantastic job of defending his takedown. The issue, that was all that he was focused on. He wouldn't let his hands go. He wasn't active at all. He wasn't using any offensive measures, except for the kicks, a little bit of kicks, but barely any punches were thrown really until like round 5. He was just so concerned with not getting taken down. And yeah, he didn't, but the majority of the fight was Ankalaev pushing him on the cage. Ankalaev also had the biggest moment of the fight where he hurt Pereira towards the end of the second round, somewhat dropped him. And Pereira never had a moment like that. So, even in the fight, Ankalaev had the bigger pressure, and he was the one who was actually throwing and landing the bigger shots more consistently throughout the fight. So, I think that Ankalaev certainly won the fight. It's a terrible situation for the UFC, and it feels so weird because it doesn't feel like Pereira he's done, his title runs over. It just feels like, I don't know, we thought this was going to happen. They were trying to keep Ankalaev from fighting Pereira for the belt because they were worried about this happening. It happened. I believe that they're pursuing an immediate rematch. That's what Ankalaev said today, which I'm okay with. I would have been okay with Pereira moving up to heavyweight. It just feels like it doesn't really matter. Pereira didn't look bad per se. He didn't have a good performance, but he didn't look awful. He didn't get knocked out or anything. Yeah, he lost, but it feels like nobody really cares too much. And the future of this was always going to be going up to heavyweight. If he won this fight, he was probably going to go up to heavyweight. Now that he lost this fight, he may stay at 205 and fight Ankalaev again. There comes the risk. If he fights Ankalaev again and loses again in worse fashion, that will hurt his star power. His star power is not really hurt right now. It was just a bad style matchup for him. I don't mind the rematch. I don't mind Alex going up to heavyweight. You could honestly make the case for if he goes up to heavyweight, he can go straight into a title fight. We know that Pereira is not going to want to sit out for a long time, especially after a loss and one that he didn't really get hurt in. And we also know that the UFC is still having trouble with getting John Jones over the line to fight Tom Aspinall. He wants more money. So if Jones can't fight, do Aspinall Pereira for the title. If Jones does fight, do Aspinall Jones for the title, of course, and then do Pereira Ankalaev too for the title. And then after that, win or lose, Pereira should go up to heavyweight. If he loses, he won't get an immediate title shot, which I'm okay with. Have him fight somebody else at heavyweight. He'll probably have one fight there before going for the title. I'm just not really sure what to make of all of it. Pereira still feels like he's still a superstar for the UFC. This loss didn't really hurt his stock that much, if you ask me. But it is kind of weird to think he's not the champion anymore. That's Ankalaev. He's not number 1 anymore. And in fact, the UFC pound-for-pound rankings, he dropped from number 2 or 3 all the way to number 8, which I was shocked by. I didn't think they deserved to fall that far. You do have to put Ankalaev above him. But Ankalaev, looking at some of the top 5, is like, well, he's not better than that guy, and he's not better than that guy. So I get it, but I think Pereira should be right under Ankalaev. They have Bilal in the middle right now, which I don't hate, but it just feels so weird having Pereira so late, having him so low down in the rankings. I don't know. Co-main event, you had Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev, the rematch, which this fight was much more exciting than I was anticipating. It was awesome. It was back and forth. It was competitive. I thought Gaethje was just going to come out. He had been in camp, long return. He's already beaten Fiziev. No, it was very competitive. Some people thought Fiziev won. I thought the Gaethje certainly did enough. It was pretty easy to score for the first 2 rounds. Fiziev round 1, Gaethje round 2, and round 3. I think that Gaethje's later work was able to get him the win. That one fight of the night honors as it should. I thought it was a tremendous fight, really exciting. As for what's next for Gaethje, it's hard to say. Lightweight is such a stacked division. We really don't know what's going to happen next. Islam versus Ilya looks likely. Charles Oliveira could be likely. And if it is going to be it could be Charles versus Islam for the belt. And if so, maybe Justin versus Arman. And if that doesn't happen, I heard some people say, oh, if Paddy beats Michael Chandler, do Paddy Justin Gaethje later this year in October. I love that plan as well. So there's a lot of good fights for him. I know that he doesn't fight too often. He'll probably take a good 6+ months off after this fight. After that, I would like to see him return, in a very good fight, and I think that he will. So we'll see what happens. Also on the card, we had Jalen Turner getting submitted in 1 round by Ignacio Bahamondes, which was very surprising. Turner afterwards said he was going to retire, which was even more surprising. He's only 29, and he's had a lot of losses, but, I hope he doesn't. But if he's lost, his love for the game, then so be it. Mauricio Rufy had the KO of the night, potentially the KO of the year. Wheel kick KO over King Green in literally 2 minutes. Unbelievable. I don't know what's left for King Green, but Rufy called for a fight night main event against Beneil Dariush. Sign me up. That sounds awesome. Rufy needs to be in the rankings now. The fighting nerds continue to just take over the sport. Brilliant win there. You had Amanda Lemos versus Yasmin Lucindo on the main card, which really shouldn't have been. I thought Lemos looked good, but wasn't necessarily a great fight. It was just a lot of grappling. She performed well, but it wasn't super entertaining. Joshua Van defeated Ray Suruya. Both these guys, they said it was the first time that there was a UFC fight between 2 guys born in the 2000s, so that's pretty cool. And again, this was just another undefeated fighter losing, getting dominated based off a poor game plan. Suruya was only shooting for takedowns, and Van was just beating him up the whole time. So I just thought it was a really, really poor game plan from Suruya, and it cost him his undefeated record on a big stage. He'll come back. It's not that big a deal, but, he could have won. What else happened on that card? Bruno Ferreira and Armen Petrosyan had a very good fight in the first round. Petrosyan got a point taken for shots below the belt, I think it was, and then he gets submitted in round 2. Very, very cool stuff. Carlos Leal had an amazing round 1 TKO over Alex Morono. I don't know what the ref was waiting for in that fight. Morono was a dead man walking on the fence for a whole minute, just falling over. And then you had 2 fights open up the card that I did not like the decisions for. Ozzy Diaz and DeJordan Santos was one of the better fights of the night. Diaz got the decision. I wasn't mad at it. I had Santos winning, but not a big deal. And then Myron Santos completely robbed Francis Marshall. Marshall won easily round 1 and 2. You could even give him round 3, I think. So that's a potential 30-27 scored the wrong way. Terrible robbery. It was a split decision. 2 judges had it 29-28, and the other one had it 30-27 for Marshall, like I said. I couldn't believe that. Terrible robbery. The UFC scoring needs to get better, but overall, I thought it was a pretty good card. Standouts were Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev's fight, and then performances from Ignacio Bahamondes and Mauricio Rufy. Just good stuff. I know that the fight night this weekend is pretty bad, and people are on Twitter saying, oh, this is the worst not the worst we've ever seen, but they're saying UFC is washed. I don't think UFC is washed, but it's not a great card. Outside of the main event, I think the main event is a pretty good, pretty intriguing fight at middleweight, but the rest of it is, not super exciting. And then the other biggest card this weekend outside of UFC, the biggest boxing card would have to be Natasha Jonas, Lauren Price at Royal Albert Hall. I thought this was a really good card. All women's fights, they all went the distance. And Lauren Price completely dominated Natasha Jonas. I had winning every single round, as did one of the judges. 98-92 and 98-93 were the other scorecards. Absolutely fantastic performance. I knew going into this fight that Price was going to win. I just didn't think it was going to be like that. I mean, she really just made Jonas show her age in there. She was much younger, of course, Price was, but she was also faster, so fast and so sharp and so strong. She just beat Natasha to the punch every single time, completely outclassed her, if we're being honest. It was tremendous stuff. Really good performance, and she says she wants to be undisputed next. You can argue she's the best in the division. She may be, probably is. You've got Sandy Ryan and Michaela Mayer. They're rematching March 29th. After that, I want them to go straight into a fight with Lauren Price for undisputed. And to be honest, I think you could do that at MSG on July 11th. Why not? I know it could be difficult because you're getting a boxer fighter versus either a top rank or a matchroom fighter. It may be hard to get that on the Netflix card, but we've seen these promoters look at Turkey and the Riyadh season cards and be like, okay, it's big opportunities for the fighters. Let's put them there. We know that Eddie Hearn put Katie Taylor on the Netflix card. We know that Top Rank put Bruce Carrington on the Netflix card. We know that Golden Boy was going to put Floyd Schofield on the Netflix card last year with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. So I'm hopeful that they realize, this is a big opportunity for our fighters. MVP may not allow us to be fully involved, which I think is stupid, but we got to do what's right for them. I think that that's a perfect fight to go on that undercard. Caroline Dubois was in the co-main event. She looked great until she didn't. Totally was dominating Bo Mi Ray Shin. Pretty entertaining fight. And then the last 2 rounds, I had her losing. Round 8 was when it started to switch. And then round 10 specifically, Dubois looked awful in. And I don't want to say she was nearly stopped, but she was getting beaten up bad. Just completely lost her gas tank. They said afterwards that she was sick, which take it for what you will. It was not the same Caroline Dubois we're used to seeing, at least not at the end. And I was watching it thinking, oh, wow, we really need to see her in a unification, which we were already saying, but we really need to. And I'm just worried that after that last 2 minutes, Boxer and team are now going to be a little bit hesitant to put her into a unification. I mean, her and Beatrice Ferreira is the fight, and watching that, I was going to say, yeah, definitely has to be the favorite, and she still may be, but, it's a lot closer now than it has been before. So, yeah, we'll see what they do next, but it was not her best performance at the end, and it sucks because she looked so good and then, just kind of lost all our momentum at the end. Karis Ardingstall dominated Raven Chapman. That was very surprising. I had Ardingstall winning 98-91. She even dropped her in the second round. I was really excited for that fight. That was what I thought could be the closest fight of the night, and it was not at all. Ardingstall looked very good. She called for a title shot at the end. She said she wanted to fight Nina Minka later this year and then fight Skye Nicholson next year in a unification. I think that's a really good plan. I don't know if she's going to get the world title shot next. I wouldn't be mad at it, but I think that she could have another fight in between them. This was her first 10-rounder. She's now the British champion. But, featherweight in women's division is a very interesting division. She was able to drop Chapman, which Skye Nicholson wasn't able to do. I know that doesn't mean she's better. Nicholson isn't a power puncher, but it's still notable. And, yeah, we're going to see what they do with Ardingstall next, but very good performance. Chloe Watson and Jasmina Zapatochna was a very good, very competitive fight. Probably the best fight of the card. And Zapatochna got the decision that I really did not think that she deserved. It was a very close fight, but I had Watson winning 96-94. There was a lot of really close rounds, and I thought that Zapatochna got a lot of the middle to late rounds. I had her winning round 3 and then also 6 through 8, but I think that Watson was able to clear it up in the last bit. I thought that she won a lot of the first half of the fight, and then in the last 2 rounds was able to solidify her place. She doesn't win the fight. She's no longer undisputed and loses her European title. I'm hopeful that they do a rematch. I wouldn't mind it because it was a really good fight, but yeah. And then Francesca Hennessy got an 80-72 win over Gemma Rueg. They're talking about doing her in a potential world title fight next. They were talking about doing it for this card. I think she's she's developing really well, but she was in there with somebody with a negative record. I don't think that it's time to send her in for a world title. I just don't think that she's at that level yet. She certainly will be at some point, but slow the rolls. We'll get to that day eventually, but it's not tomorrow. Okay, we had a Golden Boy fight night on Thursday night, which was headlined by Manny Flores, who took care of Jorge Leyva pretty quickly. I'm checking here. I think it was only a couple rounds. It took him just 4 rounds. His younger brother, Grant Flores, got a second-round KO in the co-main event. Ruslan Abdullayev had his pro debut. A very good card over there in Indio, California. Their Golden Boy fight nights are hit or miss. It just depends on if you get a lot of stoppages like this one did. The most notable thing about the card was Federico Pacheco Jr., who was in with Arnulfo Cazares, and Cazares was vastly undersized. Pacheco was 270 pounds. Cazares only 190. So apparently you can fight at heavyweight as long as you're above 175, which I was, unaware of, and I don't think that this fight should have been sanctioned, even if that is the rule. I was shocked that I know this was a late replacement, but come on. Couldn't have found anybody over 200 pounds. This is Pacheco's, his 8th fight, and he was able to get the stoppage at the end, but Cazares actually hit some big shots on him and was able to hold his own for a long time. So I was very impressed, but that fight probably shouldn't have been allowed to happen. 80-pound weight difference, especially when Cazares isn't even close to the heavyweight, minimum. Also on Friday, you had Harlem Eubank, Tyrone McKenna, which was a pretty decent Wasserman card. Eubank looked very good in the main event against McKenna. He stopped him in round 10. Tyrone McKenna is not somebody who's, the next big thing or anything. He's lost, I think, 5 or 6 times now. He's a very fun fighter to watch. He's always in fun fights, whether he gets knocked out or knocks somebody else out. So I enjoyed the fight a lot, but Eubank dominated him. He dropped him, I think, 3 or 4 times en route to a victory in the 10th. And then afterwards, he and Chris Eubank Sr., who we know is closely affiliated with his nephew, not his son, at least not nowadays, call out Conor Benn afterwards saying, we don't think that the Eubank Jr. fight is going to happen with Ben. He should just come and fight. He should come and fight Harlem instead because they're both welterweights. And, that does make sense. And I think that the Harlem Eubank-Conor Benn fight makes sense after Conor Benn potentially loses to Chris Eubank Jr. If he loses to Jr., then you go into the Harlem Eubank fight. But, Eubank looked a lot better than I was expecting him to. I thought McKenna was going to be a very big test, and it was, but Eubank came out very well, and he, showed his levels in there. I think that I would love to see him in a British title level fight. Conor Walker is the current champion. I think that that's a good opponent for him there. That's a fight that he could win, and I think that, he was at 140 before this, and we talked about Dalton Smith and Adam Azim, and guys like Jack Rafferty, if he was still at 140, those were the fights I'd be saying he should go for now. So I want to see him in those similar fights. Echo Esserman, and such. Very good fighter, I thought. And then Michael Conlon returned over 8 rounds, points win. And then they announced afterwards he's going to fight Cristobal Lorente, I believe in May, for the EBU European Super Featherweight title. I think that's a really good plan from Wasserman as well. Conlon did not look sensational. He looked good, but I was hoping he could stop an opponent like Con. But nevertheless, he won almost every round. And, they need to get him in a bigger fight. And I think that Lorente is a very good step back up because they say once they want to get him another world title shot. I don't think that's going to happen, but a fighter like Lorente is going to be a very competitive fight for where Conlon is at in his career, but it's a winnable fight. So I'm excited to see that one go down. Tom Welland returned. He looked very good. Matty Harris had a great first-round KO. Not a lot to say except for Dan Toward, who was shockingly knocked out in the 5th round. Wasserman's 2 big prospects are Welland and Toward, and I'm very high on Tom Welland. He had a 4th-round stoppage, looked phenomenal like usual. And I think that Dan Toward is good, but I never thought he is like a certain world champion one day. I think Tom Welland is more than likely going to be a world champion one day. I don't feel the same way about Dan Toward, and especially not after tonight. He was in there with Muzamiru Kakande. It was a pretty competitive fight. Toward was definitely up, and then round 5, just one shot just puts Toward down, and he struggles to get back up and is just out of it. A good stoppage by the referee there, but I was just shocked. You just don't see that happen. Huge upset, especially for any of the prospects to go down like that on the card. You wouldn't expect it to be Toward, and yet it was. So don't know what's next for him. I assume that Wasserman will stick by him. They don't have a lot of big talents, and he can still be something. But, that'll set him back a good bit. That was a pretty nasty knockout. So, we'll see. Friday, we also saw Albert Baturgaziev versus Neri Ariel Cruz Romero in Moscow. This was for the WBA interim super featherweight title. It was an interesting fight. Baturgaziev mostly dominated out of the third, except for the 3rd round, really, where he was dropped twice and almost a 3rd time. Weird stuff. He was very badly hurt. And then the rest of the fight, is like dominating Romero, and it seems like every shot he's landing on him is hurting him, but Romero just wouldn't go down outside of the fourth round, where actually also in the fourth round they kind of fell over each other, and uh, Baturgaziev hit Romero when he was down, like just like laid out, which was super dirty, and of course immediately loses a point, which I was happy with. And he kept on doing stuff like that. He kept on when they were separating and stuff. They were separating. He'd punch him, or the fight was closing, the round was closing out. He'd punch him again. So a little bit dirty stuff there from Baturgaziev. I didn't love that. But he is the interim champion with the WBA, wins a unanimous decision. I had a 114-110 just because of the points he lost for the knockdown and the dirty stuff. It was a really entertaining fight, and he's likely to get upgraded to full champion with Lamont Roach at 135 right now, fighting Tank likely again. So, be ready for that. But he's huge for the weight class. But I don't think that he's necessarily, as good as the other champs there. So somebody will beat him soon enough. He didn't look very good. And then Friday night in, I think it was Toronto, you had Most Valuable Prospects 11. Pretty good card. Lucas Body headlined. He defeated Ryan James Rakaza by unanimous decision. I had it 96-93, so it was a close fight, but one that Body deserved the decision in. It was exciting. He did get a knockdown in round 7. Co-main event, you had Sarah Bailey beating Christina Navarro over 10 rounds to defend her WBA light flyweight world title. That was a pretty entertaining fight, even though it was largely one-sided. Navarro still had her moments, being entertaining. Tamtha Bolt got a very good first-round TKO. She's going to do big things. I mean, honestly, we could see her in a world title fight by the end of the year. The plan, I think, is to probably get her on July 11th, that big card. I wouldn't be surprised if they try and rush her to get a world title shot then, but I really hope that they don't. I don't think that they will. This was her second fight, still only 6 rounds, but soon enough she will be fighting for big fights, and I could totally see her and Clarissa Shields sharing the ring one day, as Shields is going to need more opponents coming up the ranks. Donnie Foreman got a third-round heavyweight knockout over Pavel Orednik. Both were undefeated with all wins by knockout heading into this fight, and Foreman, the Canadian, proved the stronger fighter. He dropped him twice in the first round and then stopped him in the third. Really good fighter, really good stuff, exciting fight. And also on the main card, you had Mark Smither and Jaime Cuesta in a pretty boring fight that Smither was able to get the decision win in. I had him winning 77-75. I know some people had it going the other way or it being a draw. But, decent fight. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was pretty bad, but decent performance, I guess. Just not very exciting. I think he's 14-1 with no wins by knockout, so that's not great. And then lastly, on Saturday night, we also had the Pro Box TV card, Arnold Kagai versus Joet Gonzalez, where Gonzalez upset Arnold Kagai in a brilliant fight. That was probably my favorite fight of the weekend, maybe, outside of Gaethje Fiziev, and this one may have even been better. Baturgaziev Romero is another one that I thoroughly enjoyed. But, this was an awesome thought. It was competitive back and forth for a while. I thought that Gonzalez, took control of the fight. I had him winning all 4 of the last few rounds. Kagai was deducted a point in round 5 for clinching a lot, and nearly deducted another point later on. I think he just tired a little bit, and Gonzalez was just nonstop pressure. Just looked the stronger fighter. And Kagai was number 2 at the WBO, which will likely go to Gonzalez now, so we'll probably see him in a world title shot yet again. He's fought 3 times for a title and not won any of them. We'll see if he can change his luck, but I don't think that he will. But hopefully he gets into a world title eliminator or even a world title shot. Very good performance. Luis Torres gave Nicholas Walters all he could handle in just 3 rounds. It was odd. Walters took a break at the end of the third and then didn't come out for the fourth, just saying, I don't want to fight anymore, I'm done. It was weird because Torres didn't seem to be – he was certainly winning, and it didn't seem that he was hurting Walters too much. But, if Walters is saying, I don't got this anymore, I don't want to do this, then that's good. He knows that he doesn't want to fight anymore, and I hope that he retires now, because if you don't have that instinct anymore and you can't take those shots, then you shouldn't be in the ring. So, but, good instinct from him there. And then Jesus Saracho and Louis Lopez had a draw in a fight that I narrowly had Louis Lopez winning. I'm not mad at all at that decision. I could have had it going for Saracho the other way. Saracho missed weight yet again. If you remember, in November, he was meant to fight at 140 against Tito Mercado, and he came in at 147. So, massively missed weight there. And, this time came in at 148 for the 147 welterweight fight. I don't know what's going on there. He just doesn't seem disciplined. He's got a lot of talent, but doesn't seem disciplined. And he could have gotten the win if he'd come in on weight and fought better. So, we'll see what they do with him from here on. But they had some pretty good prospects on that card as well. Brandon McCarthy and Justin Valoria, to name a few, had some very good wins. Really good weekend of fights. There was a lot of awesome fights this weekend. And this week we've got some more. Let's talk about Wednesday. Keith Thurman returns after a long layoff, like 5 years. Or not 5 years, but he's only fought once in the past 5 years. He's in with Brock Jarvis, who is a fighter at 160. I think he's 22-1, so a bit of a prospect. He's never been in, the top of the top. He has 20 wins by knockout, but he started his career at 115. So unbelievable, and even looks big for 160. He looks bigger than Thurman. But this fight, I think, is at 154. Yeah, no, it's at 154. I hope that Thurman will win. My issue is that he's in there with a much younger and probably stronger fighter in Jarvis. And, Thurman hasn't fought in 3 years, in a very long time. So I'm worried to see, how much he can do here. But he's got a big fight with Tim Tszyu lined up. And if Brock Jarvis is to win, then he gets his hands on Nikita Tszyu. So they both get a shot at the Tszyu brother if they win. I think that Thurman should win this. I think he should. If he loses, it's a huge upset just because this fight is so random. They're literally just doing it to set up the Tim Tszyu fight. He's going to fight with No Limit in Australia, get himself a profile there, take on an okay name, get a win, and then go into the Tim Tszyu fight, knock off the ring rust. But, we'll see what happens. I'm going to pick Keith Thurman to win this one by, I'll say, late stoppage. I think that he should win that. And hope that he does, because most of all, I want to see him in a big fight. But we've got I feel like there's some big fight buzz here. I don't know. I know it's a big fight in Australia, not necessarily it is up here, but we'll see. They fight for the WBA International 154 title. You have Michael Zarafa returning against Bazir I. He should get a win, as should Matteo Tapia returning against Sergey Vorobov. If you remember, Matteo Tapia had a fight of the year against, I think his name was Endry Saavedra on the Tszyu Murtazaliev card in October. Fantastic fight. He didn't look great there. He got a draw when he may have lost it, but okay card. This one will be broadcast, not live, but I think on a replay at 9 a.m. Eastern on the PBC YouTube channel. It's, of course, on KO Sports and and Main Event pay-per-view in Australia. Here it's free. They're going to drop the full fight card. I doubt the prelims will be on there, but we're going to get the full main card probably dropping at 9 a.m. They may be doing it live. I hope they just do, just drop the whole stream, and then I can just watch the main event and then watch the other fights. But, excited to see this card. Should be pretty good. And then we have another big card on Thursday in Tokyo. Now, we actually have another weekday card, also in the early morning. This one will be on ESPN Plus at, I think, 5 a.m. Eastern. It's supposed to be 4 a.m., but they changed it to 5 a.m., which, I appreciate. It'll be headlined by Kenshiro Taraji and Seijo Yuriakui. They fight for the unified WBC and WBA flyweight world titles. I'm going to be honest. In this one, I think that Taraji should be able to get it done. I think Taraji is the strongest of the flyweight champions. I think Akui is maybe the weakest of the flyweight champions. I still think he's a very good fighter. But I just see this one going Taraji's way. I think Taraji is certainly the bigger puncher of the two. He is 24-1 with 15 knockouts, as opposed to Akui's. Let me pull it up here. He's 21-2-1 with 11 KOs, and both of his losses have come by knockout. They were a while ago, both in 8-rounders. He's looked in very good form since then. But I think that Taraji will be able to take this fight. We'll see if it's by stoppage. I think it could be, but I'm going to say it's by decision. I expect it to be a really good fight, but I'm really happy these Japanese fighters are finally unifying. I feel like we haven't gotten enough of that with them. They've got so many world titles, and none of them are unifying, so it's good to see that they're starting to. In the co-main event, I think it is, you have Anthony Alasquaga, who's also a champion at flyweight. He has the WBO title, and he'll be fighting Hiroto Kyoguchi in a fight that he should win. Alasquaga is very good. He's a very good fighter. I definitely expect him to come through with this one with a win, and then he'll likely fight the winner of, I think it's Angel Ayala and Masamichi Yabuki are fighting at the end of the month for the IBF title. I'd like to see him unify with that champion. And then also on the card, a third world title fight. I love it. You have Shukichi Iwata defending his WBO light flyweight world championship against Rene Santiago. If you remember, last year, Rene Santiago challenged Jonathan Bamba Gonzalez, who held this title at the time, the WBO 108 title, in a competitive fight in Puerto Rico, and one that I thought that Santiago actually deserved the win. It went to Bamba, but I thought that Santiago won that one. If you remember, Bamba actually was the guy who challenged Olascuaga in October for his WBO flyweight title, and after like one round, I think he got headbutt in the eye or something, and then just quit. And it was a no contest at the time that then got overturned to a win for Olascuaga. So Iwata Santiago should be a pretty good fight. I'm going to say Iwata still retains the title because he's in Japan and you don't really see the Japanese fighters lose too much. I'm not saying that they get decisions on the scorecards, they don't deserve, but I think that Iwata will win by stoppage. I think that, in the lower weight classes, Japan runs it. But it should be a pretty good scrap. I'm excited for that card. So 2 good weekday cards this week. I'm excited for both of them. Definitely more excited for Taraji Akui, just because that's a 3 world title fight card, but excited to see Keith Thurman return. Okay, let's talk about some other stuff that's been going on. Firstly, we had the Times Square press conference on Monday. Very entertaining press conference, much more so than the last one. Devin and Ryan actually went at each other. You had Teofimo Lopez still going crazy, talking to everyone. He brought a sword. It was weird. And then he slapped Barboza in the face-off, which was crazy. They've got big, bad blood now. Really excited for that fight. That's easily the most competitive one of the card. Rolly Romero was there just being absolutely hilarious. He's one of the funniest boxers in the sport right now. Jose Ramirez still didn't really say much. Devin Haney was just, not really focused on him, but more so responding to Ryan Garcia and taking in the boos. And then, interestingly, his dad, went at Todd Grisham in his interview, calling him a piece of shit and stuff, for not, which was weird because it wasn't really anything specific. Grisham was just asking Haney, I guess, some tough questions, but not really, saying, like, how do you feel about these boos? They don't like you. Like you didn't have a good performance last time. How do you feel? Just basic questions. And, Bill Haney kind of lost his stuff. We all know Bill was a little bit out there, but that was pretty funny. Really good press conference, very exciting. I'm really excited for this May 2nd card. This was what we were waiting for all 6 of these guys in the same division, essentially, to just all be talking smack to each other, and we got it with this one. So really good stuff. Similar division at 135, the Tank Roach 2 decision has been upheld by the New York State Athletic Commission. I'm not too surprised. It's very rare we see an overturn. I thought that it was more likely in this case than a lot of others, but they upheld it. And it doesn't really matter. We're likely going to get the rematch next. Gary Jonas of ProBox TV said that in his head, it's a done deal. He thinks that everything's good to go. But usually when somebody says something like that, it means it's not going to happen. And that's what, they're saying that Roach's side of the deal was signed, which I'm not surprised by. I think Roach even said he's already signed his contract. But we'll see what happens with Tank. But I do think Tank is going to want that rematch next, and I hope that we get it. Dmitry Bivol David Benavidez is in discussions for summer between PBC and Matchroom. Now, this is interesting with the verbiage here used here. It says it's in discussions between PBC and Matchroom. They didn't mention Turkey. And this is also a few days after Turkey said that he no longer wants Bivol Benavidez next. I think he wants Bivol Beterbiev 3, which I don't blame him. And it seems like we're kind of moving on from Beterbiev, which I think I'm okay with, but I would like to see the trilogy just because the first 2 fights have been amazing. And Beterbiev did give Bivol the rematch, but the thing is that, like, the first fight felt so close, felt more like a draw, and then Bivol certainly won the second one, so it felt like there was no more doubt, even though it's one apiece. But Bivol does feel like the better fighter, and it feels like he'll, be a decent favorite going into the third fight. So I don't care if it's Beterbiev or Benavidez. We've just got so many good fights at 175, but it looks like it may be Benavidez next. Apparently they were finalizing the deal. We'll see where it is. I wouldn't mind if it's in Saudi. I wouldn't mind if it's in Vegas. But it'll be a huge fight nonetheless, one of the best in the sport. So, yeah, I'm very excited for that one. Okay, now we're going to run through a lot of other news. We got so much to talk about. Let's keep on running with it. Merab Dvalishvili, Sean O'Malley, potentially at UFC 316 June 7th. This wouldn't surprise me, but Merab looks like he's going to be one of the more active champions we've had recently. He fought in September. again in January, and now looks like he'll be returning in June. This makes sense just with where all the other champs are at the moment in their in the plan the UFC has. I think this one's going to be in Newark, if I'm right, at the Prudential Center. I could be wrong, but that was where they had their June date last year, and I think that the plan is to do the same location here. I don't mind this fight. I know that Sean is getting the immediate title shot after a loss. Very similar to Israel Adesanya, how that happened, and how Alex Pereira is going to happen more than likely. But I don't mind this. He's running it right back with Merab. I'm going to be honest. I think Merab will still win this fight. I think it'll be closer, but I think that Merab will, still be able to just offset O'Malley. I think that Sean will definitely do more because he didn't really do anything in the last fight, but I still believe in Merab, and I think that Merab will get it done. The Ring announced 2 new events. So July 12th, they're going to have another iconic NYC location. They did not say venue. They said location, and this is going to be the day after Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano 3 is in Madison Square Garden. So they could do 2 back-to-back events in MSG and have that be, some crazy stuff. But I don't think that that's the case. I think that we're going to see, something like the Statue of Liberty. Or, I don't even know, other than Times Square, what really is feasible. Central Park, maybe. I don't even really know. But, I'm very excited to see. I bet it'll be Statue of Liberty. They also confirmed that we're going to see Alcatraz in March 2026. We were initially hearing it's going to be June 28th of this year. I think that was what they were hoping for. And then they got told, yeah, we can do it, but it's going to be a while. So March 2026 looks like it'll be the plan. I'm excited for that. I'm sure that'll be on a TKO card. Very excited to see what goes on in Alcatraz. I can't believe that they actually got that over the line. Matchroom announced 2 new UK shows. They said Dalton Smith will be returning against Matthew Germain on April 19th in Sheffield, which is interesting. This one's at the Cannon Medical Arena, not the Utilita Arena, which I was a little bit surprised by just because I thought that Smith does pretty good numbers there, and maybe he's just not able to have the fight. They can't do the fight that weekend, but he returns nonetheless, which I'm excited to see. I think that he'll, very easily get that fight done. I don't think that's necessarily like a very tough fight for him, but I could be wrong. We'll see. Also on that card, you've got Ishmael Davis returning against Ryan Kelly for the British Super Welterweight title eliminator. So that's a pretty interesting fight. I think Davis will win. I'm glad he's getting a good spot with Matchroom after his stepping in twice on late notice against world title opponents and Josh Kelly and Sergey Boachuk. Josh Warrington returns on this card, which is surprising. Looks like he's going to be returning in a easy fight. And I know the plan is to do what Eddie Hearn wants to do is Warrington Conlon next. Obviously Hearn didn't know about the Conlon Lorente plans, but even after that, doing that fight I like. Josh Padley will also return on this card. Good spot for him. Less than 2 months after the Shakur fight. I love to see that. Giorgio Vizioli is going to step up against Kane Baker. I say step up because, he's a little bit more of a known journeyman and, he's an okay fighter, but one that Vizioli should still definitely win. And then you've got Lele Buttigieg also returning on that card. And then they also announced at the Copper Box, May 17th, we'll get the rematch between Johnny Fisher and David Allen. So I actually had Allen winning the first fight, as many others did. That one's in Saudi. This one's in London, as it should be. They were saying, this could do the O2 Arena. I didn't know if that would. I know that Fisher's a huge ticket seller, but he didn't even sell out with the first fight against Babbage that he did at the Copper Box. So he willed this one for sure because you have David Allen, who's a British opponent. It's a tougher fight. There's a storyline there. They fought once. I love that they're running this fight immediately back, and I think that Fisher will win. But yeah, excited to see that go down. And then speaking of Matchroom, while we're on the topic, they also confirmed some of the guys on the undercard for their Enes Stanionis card. So we already know Ray Ford will be in the co-main event. Not sure against who yet, but Shakram Giasov, who was supposed to fight Stanionis, will be there, and he'll be ordered to fight the winner of this with the WBA. Harley Medeiros, who's a pretty good fighter, pretty good prospect. They've got Zakeen Moses, who's looked very good. He's the cousin of Shakur Stevenson. And Tamir Smalls will be on that card, who I'm not too familiar with, but looks like we'll get a decent U.S. undercard there. Not like the best or anything, but decent. Excited to see that one go down. Darren Till versus Darren Stewart will be 8 rounds. That's interesting just because the main event with KSI and Dylan Dennis is only 6. We know that Darren Till's fight with Anthony Taylor was 8 rounds. So I like that he's saying, no, I'm going to fight 8 rounds because a lot of those fights on Misfits really should be 8 rounds, including this one, including the KSI Dennis fight. Julius Bayo, who is the new top-ranking OTX fighter, is out of his March 22nd debut in his hometown in San Diego, which sucks. He got injured. That really, really sucks for him for, the whole plan. Literally was going to, debut in his hometown. It was going to be like the feature. And, is out of that fight, which sucks. Top Rank signed a lot of good guys. They also signed, just today it was announced they're signing Emmanuel Chance, who I think he's only like 18 or something, but he's going to make his debut with them soon. They've also got Juan Mita Lopez de Jesus Jr., I think is fighting like next week or something in Puerto Rico. So really good, a lot of really good fighters they're signing. Top Rank is one of the best at building world champions, and they're not slowing down. Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano 3 is not a 12 3-minute round fight as verbally agreed during the rematch build-up. So if you remember last time, they agreed that if there was a trilogy, they would do 12 threes. Katie Taylor agreed to that. That's not the case. Serrano was upset. Understandably, this really should be 12 threes. I want to see women's fights go to 12 3-minute rounds, at least the bigger ones. This one really should have. But, Katie just doesn't want to do that, I guess. Kind of puts her in a bad situation. Whatever. But this is definitely underwhelming. Not underwhelming because I kind of forgot about that, but disappointing. I would have liked it to be 36 minutes as opposed to 20. But, what are you going to do? Mauricio Suleiman, president of the WBC, is unconcerned about TKO, thinks it could be good for the sport, says they've always supported change and movement. I think that a lot of the guys are having to question what's really going on here. Oscar De La Hoya, as you saw, he was offended by Turkey's comments. He said it was hurt how Turkey's talking about was going to crush everyone and all this stuff, which I get. It is a little bit like, hey, we've given you our fighters, we've worked with you, and you're saying you're going to crush us. I think that Turkey's just a little bit, he gets a little bit, as Eddie Hearn said, bullish in his announcements and stuff like that. And Eddie Hearn doesn't seem like he's pressed about it. And he said that if you're confident in your business, you'll be fine, and that the belts have a lot of history and that the fighters want to fight for them, and that's a good point. We're not saying that all the fighters are going to run over to Turkey and Dana where they may get paid less with Dana, to fight for a belt that doesn't have as much history as the WBC does. And I think that's kind of what Mauricio Suleiman's at. So a lot of the guys are unconcerned. It seems like Oscar is concerned, and rightfully so, and he seems like he's kind of upset that Turkey's now throwing everyone under the bus. So it's going to be really interesting to see what goes down with everyone taking sides here, and see who still works together and who doesn't, and how much Turkey's going to screw them all over. So we talked about the ProBox TV card on Saturday between Kagai and Gonzalez. They announced 2 other cards of that one, the first of which will be April 5th between Nikolaus Flaz and Gabriel Maestre. That'll be a WBA title eliminator at welterweight, which, is cool, but I'm just a little bit surprised because I'm like, well, hold on. We're doing an eliminator when the champion is fighting Boots, and then we already have a mandatory with Giasov. So maybe it kind of seems like they may be preparing for, whoever, if say Ennis beats Stanionis, he's probably going to vacate the WBA title, move it to 154. Giasov would then fight the winner of this one for vacant, I guess. I'm not really sure. But it's just the whole thing is quite odd how this is an eliminator, but it's a very good fight, very good competitive 50-50 fight. Maestre gave Stanionis a very good fight in May of last year, and actually Stanionis' last fight. Flaz looked very good. He had a good win in November. This will be in Philadelphia, so, they're still moving around the country. And then, they've got some pretty good fighters on the undercard. Co-main is Ricardo Salas versus Kent Cruz, and then Mike Kwan Williams will be on the card versus Antonio Moran. So really good card again. And then April 12th, they're going to have another card, which isn't quite as big, but looks like it'll be pretty good in Maryland. Headlined by Jordan White versus Jose Romero, and then co-main is Steven Shaw versus Rafael Akpegiori. ProBox is doing good stuff. They're doing 2 U.S. events a month. I don't know what's going on with the Conlon boxing deal or Conlon Sport, if that's still happening, because, they did events in November and December, and then Conlon had a February card, which was supposed to be on ProBox TV, and then it ended up just not being televised at all, so they haven't said anything else, so I don't know what is going on there, but I'm sure we'll find out soon, or, it'll just be made clear. We won't hear anything, but it'll be made clear what's really going on. But, excited to see ProBox launch this bigger schedule. And they've also got the March 22nd card between Lester Martinez and Joe Sean James, and a women's world title fight on that card. Alex Gueche signs with MVP. So they're signing another young prospect. He's fought on one or two of their prospects cards. Just excited to see that and see how they build a lot of these younger fighters. MVP has done very good with Jake Paul, of course, and then Amanda Serrano and supporting women's boxing, as we'll see with this July card. And then also doing most valuable prospects and signing some prospects from there. So we'll see what they do with Goetze. I'm sure that they'll have him on a card pretty soon. I bet they'll have another prospects card before the Taylor Serrano 3 card. Paul Hughes will return in Belfast on May 10th on a PFL Europe card. This will make me more excited to watch PFL Europe. I like when they have, because the Europe season I don't really care for too much. If you have like a big name guy on the main event, I'll watch it. Like Cedric Doumbé or Savannah Marshall they did last year. Paul Hughes I'm excited for. They haven't said who he's fighting. I don't think it'll be Usman Nurmagomedov, as a lot of other people are saying. Seems like that rematch will not be happening next, like it totally should have. But I was reminded that the discussion was, could we see Nurmagomedov versus Hughes 2 in Belfast, because the first one was in Dubai. And I would love to see that happen. I just don't think it's going to. We'll see, but it doesn't look like it'll happen. Inoue will announce his Vegas fight on Wednesday. Top Rank's done a really good job with teasing that one. Like the monster's getting closer to Vegas. Some cool posters. We'll find out tomorrow. I think it's going to be Ramon Cardenas. I'm pretty sure we already know that. It'll be May 4th. And then I think in the co-main event, we'll see Rafael Espinoza versus Edward Vasquez. So pretty good card there. I'm really excited to see Inoue return, especially in the States. Tyson Fury had a misleading video this week with Soccer Aid. He's just teasing like, oh, did you miss me, of him walking out of stadium. It's going to be Soccer Aid. I don't even know if he's playing. I think he may be a coach is what I heard, but it's whatever. I just thought it was interesting that Queensberry were, feeding into that, posting the clip as well. Bakram Murtazaliev and Virgil Ortiz are apparently in early negotiations for a fight. I just watched Ortiz on the Ariel and Ade show. He didn't say anything. They didn't bring it up, but I really hope so. That is the best fight at 154. I don't know about Sebastian Fundora. He's fighting Chordale Booker next weekend. After that, I want to see him in a big fight, preferably unification. Crawford is up at 168 now. I think Murtazaliev, Ortiz are the two best fighters and the most exciting fight in the division. That's an all-out war. Hopefully we see that one next. The PFL announces locations for the semifinals. The quarterfinals, as we know, are all going to be in Florida at the same venue at Universal Studios. They're moving around the country this time. June 12th will be Nashville. June 20th will be Wichita, and then June 27th will be Chicago. So some familiar locations for what we've seen from them before, but excited to see these fights go down. Nonetheless, apparently, actually very soon at 8 p.m., so probably once this comes out before this comes out, they're announcing their bracket for the tournament, which they definitely need to, because those fights start happening in right about a month from now. TKO Boxing. I don't know if this was announced, but it was just reported their weight classes. So they're going to have, I think it was flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and then heavyweight. So I don't have a huge problem with this, except for I just don't understand how it's going to work. Because the UFC, of course, they have their weight classes, but those are now like unified MMA rules. So are you going to just let's say there's a guy at 140 or 130, or they come over to fight, are you going to say, okay, you can fight for us, but you have to fight for 147 or 135? You have to choose. You have to either cut a lot of weight or put on weight. Or are they going to be like, yeah, we only have titles for 147, but you can fight at 140? I just don't really get it right now. We'll see if that sticks, but we know that boxing does need less weight classes. I think that doing away with some of those ones in the middle, we don't really need super bantamweight or super flyweight, but as the divisions get higher, there's bigger gaps in between them. And I mean, the jump from light heavyweight to heavyweight is crazy. You definitely need cruiserweight. And then even though cruiserweight is, still really big guys, but just jumping from 175 to heavy is crazy. I mean, think about a guy like Joshua Buatsi. He's 175, and then he moves up and he's a heavyweight. He's in with Tyson Fury. Come on, that's crazy. And then, you look at super middleweight, 160 to 175 is still a pretty big jump. That's the only one I'd say you probably want to keep that division. I know they're just trying to get rid of all the super and light stuff, but I think you need some of them. So we'll see what happens, but that's apparently what their weight classes are going to look like. Jesus Ramos, we've talked about Fundora Booker next week. He'll now be fighting Guido Schramm. His original opponent, I think it was Kevin Salgado, is now pulled out. I'm not mad at the Schramm fight. I think that's decent. I just need Ramos to run through him and then get a bigger fight after that, because he really is. He's got the goods. He can be in a big fight at 154. Give me Ramos versus somebody like Xander Zayas or Charles Conwell after this. That'd be a really good one. Top Tier has announced their next event for Sunday, May 25th at York Hall. I love that they're doing the Sunday shows. And it will be another 4-man knockout tournament, this time heavyweights. So it'll be Doran Krasmaru, Courtney Bennett, Louis Pachetti, and Teron Willett. I think I've seen Bennett and Pachetti fight before, so not like a ton of like huge names, but a 4-man knockout heavyweight tournament all in one night sounds awesome. I don't even know if that's going to be the main event of the card, but wouldn't surprise me. That should be pretty entertaining, so we'll see. Misfits have announced their card for July 22nd, or sorry, not July 22nd. It's their 22nd event, Misfits 22, X Series, I should say. And it'll be April 12th, I think, at the First Direct Arena in Leeds, headlined by Idris Virgo versus Ty Mitchell for the MF Pro light heavyweight world title, which that's a very good fight for Misfits. Very competitive. Two really good, not really good, but really good fighters for Misfits. They're both honestly pros, who just don't want to fight professionally because they're not that good. But that's a really competitive fight. Very excited to see that one go down. Julie Poco will be defending her title. She's one of the best women's crossover boxers. She's in with Aria Wild, who I looked at her Tapology. She's only had one fight list on there, and it was the Chris Cyborg fight that she randomly had in boxing like a few months ago, and she got knocked out in the second round. Aria Wild did by Chris Cyborg, so a bit of a step down from fighting a BKFC fighter, but excited to see her return nonetheless. Joey Knight, who's another one of the better, more technical fighters. I think he had some okay fights, like blue-collar boxing. He'll fight Andrew Housen, who is a former 5-time Muay Thai world champion. So an interesting crossover there. The catch is he's 45 and officially retired 10 years ago. I think he's had one or two small fights since then, but we'll see how this goes. But that's a decent fight there. And then Jordan Banjo versus Will Anderson, some random influencers that apparently should be a good fight between two debutantes. Dylan Price, who is a pro fighter that Misfits have. I think he's actually ranked with the WBC. I can't remember what division he's in, but he's ranked. Mo Dean versus Wakey Wines, store owner. So Wakey Wines, this is the guy who apparently in the UK takes Prime bottles and sells them for 10 pounds or whatever, some ridiculous stuff. And then Mo Dean is a streamer. So I won't talk about this too much, but that should be literally the worst fight ever, but it should be really funny. And then the most interesting part, a heavyweight survivor tag, which should be very interesting. They did the survivor tag one other time. They said that they're going to fix it. They have new rules, and they're going to announce who's taking part in it, and the winner of that will fight for the title, the heavyweight title that will be decided between Chase Demore and Roman Fury on their March 29th KSI card. So some good plans for Misfits here. I think this is a really fun card, it sounds by it. Okay, a few more things and we'll wrap up. Chris Eubank Jr. has reportedly been fined 100,000 pounds, which translates to $130,000 for the egg slap. I wasn't surprised that he got fined. I'm a little bit surprised at how much. 130,000 USD and 100,000 pounds is a ton of money. He said he was going to pay back all the fighters from the original card, 50 grand in total. So that's probably not happening anymore. I think this is a little bit over the top, but you got to do what you got to do. He does have the money for it. Dennis McCann said he'll be returning in May or June, and he'll release a video explaining what happened with all the failed drug tests. I can't believe he's getting a return already, but whatever. I'm very interested to see what his explanation is. And if he says egg contamination, I'm going to laugh. Okay, Martinez Aoka 2 apparently is going to happen May 11th, so that is a Sunday, I think. They were supposed to fight on New Year's Eve, of course. That didn't happen. Martinez got sick last minute, and then there was discussion about a Martinez and Bam unification that was going to happen, and then they backed out of that. Now they're going to do the rematch again, which I'm not upset with. Just curious who Bam is going to fight next. Hopefully he fights Kafu so we can still get a unification fight. And then lastly, apparently Liam Wilson will get to fight Oshaki Foster. We're hearing they potentially could be fighting on the co-main event to Keith Thurman and Tim Tszyu if they both win their next fights on their July 6th card, which we knew was probably going to be that. We knew the July 6th was probably going to be Thurman and Tszyu, but this just confirms it, and that Foster-Wilson could be the co-main event, which if so, that's a great two-fight doubleheader there, but I really just don't see why Wilson should get this title shot when Foster could unify or even just fight a better mandatory. But regardless, that's all I have today. I went through everything pretty quickly. I think there was a lot to talk about. I'm going to be more consistent. I was out of town for the past 2 weeks, but now I'm not. So the next few weeks of release should be pretty normal. Have another episode hopefully on Thursday where we'll talk about whatever happens with Keith Thurman and the Taraji Akui fight and all the other stuff, as well as what's going on this next weekend with Emma Williams and Edgar Berlanga returning, Nick Ball returning. So some pretty good stuff going on. So thank you so much for listening. I will see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.